A boy abandoned, a cruel guardian, and a deadly secret. Just when all seems lost, Noah discovers that courage and love can become powerful weapons. But will he survive the final confrontation with the man who destroyed his family? The answer is as shocking as it is inspiring. Noah knew life wasn't easy, but he still found warmth in the small world he shared with his sister, Samantha. She had a way of turning gray days into something bearable, even when the longing for their parents felt suffocating. They lived in a modest house, with walls that held equal parts laughter and tears. The days were simple, but their bond made everything feel less heavy. Despite his young age, Noah carried a depth in his eyes, as if he already understood that the world wasn't always fair. Nights were the hardest. Noah often woke with a start, dreaming of the last time he saw his parents. Samantha would comfort him, even though her own eyes betrayed the weight of her grief. Yet she was his fortress, always reminding him that fear only holds the power we give it. Somehow, this made him feel like things might be okay again. Mornings started early, with Samantha preparing breakfast while Noah did his chores. She often said that keeping the house in order helped organize their thoughts, maybe a way to manage the emotional chaos they felt inside. Noah enjoyed helping her, not because he liked cleaning, but because those moments together gave him a kind of security he feared losing. But there were days when emptiness crept into their small moments of joy. Noah sometimes felt as if abandonment was a permanent shadow in their lives. It was hard to shake the feeling that, even with Samantha by his side, something would always be missing. He couldn't explain it, but it was as if part of him was frozen in the moment when everything changed. The little garden outside their house was a refuge. Samantha tended to the plants with almost maternal care, and Noah often joined her, even if just to watch. It was there that they had their deepest conversations, where Samantha shared her dreams for the two of them. "You're going to do great things one day, Noah," she'd say, with a certainty he couldn't understand. He wanted to believe her, but his fear of the future loomed larger than his imagination could handle. In rare moments of leisure, they played old games left by their parents. It was a way to keep the memory of happier times alive. Noah loved hearing Samantha's stories about their childhood, as if that could somehow extend a past that otherwise felt increasingly distant. Yet even in those moments, a silent question lingered in both their eyes: how long can this last? Their bond was strong, but Noah could see that Samantha also had her moments of weakness. Sometimes, he'd find her gazing out the window, her eyes fixed on some distant point as if searching for answers on the horizon. He wanted to protect her, but how? It was hard to imagine that, at just 9 years old, he could do anything to ease the burden she carried alone. Despite their struggles, there was a rhythm to their life. It wasn't perfect, but it worked. Noah felt that as long as he had Samantha, he had an anchor. What he didn't know was that sometimes, what seems stable is just an illusion waiting to collapse. And when it does, the world can change in the blink of an eye. It was on an ordinary afternoon that everything began to shift. The sun streamed through the kitchen window as Samantha served lunch. She mentioned, almost casually, that the social worker had found a guardian for them. His name was Victor. Noah didn't know why, but a chill ran through him when he heard that name. That night, Noah couldn't sleep. He glanced over at Samantha, lying on the mattress next to him, and noticed that she seemed calmer than he was. But something inside him whispered that her tranquility was only temporary. What he didn't realize was that this intuition was just the start of something much bigger. Victor arrived on a quiet afternoon, the kind of day when even the birds seemed to conserve energy. Noah saw him for the first time through the living room curtain, while Samantha, more hopeful than ever, prepared to greet him. The man had a smile that seemed trustworthy, but there was something in his cold eyes that made Noah shiver. He tried to dismiss the feeling, blaming it on his fear of change. But as he would soon learn, first impressions are rarely wrong. In the first few days, Victor seemed to be everything Samantha had hoped for: polite, helpful, even caring. He brought small gifts, offered encouraging words, and made promises of a brighter future. Noah wanted to believe him but couldn't shake the moments when Victor appeared distant, as though the warmth he displayed was just a carefully crafted mask. That discomfort began to grow, but Noah didn't know how to explain what he was feeling. One night, while Samantha was out, Noah saw Victor from a different perspective. He heard the sound of drawers being rummaged through in the kitchen and found the guardian going through his sister's medication. The boy froze, hiding behind the door. Something wasn't right. He wanted to scream, to confront Victor, but fear won out. By the time Samantha returned, Victor was already sitting on the couch, wearing his usual friendly expression. Days passed, and Noah began paying closer attention to Victor's movements. He noticed small details, furtive glances, conversations cut short when he entered the room, and how Victor always seemed to dodge direct questions. Noah tried talking to Samantha, but she dismissed his concerns, thinking he was simply struggling to adjust to having a stranger in their lives. "Give him a chance, Noah," she would say, unaware of the danger lurking in their midst. Noah's distrust grew into a silent obsession. He started watching Victor more closely, almost like an amateur detective, but each discovery only led to more questions. One day, he found an empty medicine bottle in the trash that shouldn't have been there. At that moment, the boy realized he wasn't imagining things. Victor wasn't the savior he pretended to be, he was a real threat, and Noah needed to act before it was too late. The boy tried once more to warn Samantha, pleading with her to listen. He told her about the bottle, the rummaging, the glances. But she was tired, overwhelmed by her own struggles and her fragile health. "Noah, you're seeing things where there's nothing," she replied, trying to reassure him but unknowingly letting seeds of doubt take root in her own mind. Victor, on the other hand, seemed to sense that Noah was onto him. He began revealing a colder side when Samantha wasn't around, intimidating glares, sharp words. For a 9-year-old, that kind of confrontation was terrifying. The fear of being alone with Victor grew stronger every day, but Noah knew backing down wasn't an option. He had to protect his sister, even if no one believed him. One night, Noah overheard a suspicious conversation between Victor and someone on the phone. The words were few, but the tone was serious, loaded with hidden intentions. He tried to piece it together but couldn't catch everything. What became clear, however, was that Victor was hiding more than just suspicious behavior. Fear welled up in Noah's chest, but at the same time, something inside him began to change. He knew he could no longer ignore the signs. Noah started collecting small pieces of evidence of Victor's behavior: a bottle, a torn piece of paper, an audio recording secretly made. He didn't know exactly how he would use them, but he felt they could be important. It was as if every small act of courage sparked a fire that fueled his determination. Yet he also knew time was running out. As Samantha began to fall inexplicably ill, Noah felt his world crumbling around him. He didn't know what Victor was planning, but he was certain it was something terrible. And deep down, one chilling question hammered in his mind: would he be able to act in time? Noah felt despair growing within him like a suffocating shadow. He tried to warn Samantha about Victor, but every attempt was met with disbelief. "You're just stressed, Noah," she would say with a tired smile that couldn't hide her worsening health. To Noah, each word felt like a blow to his chest. He knew something was terribly wrong, but the fear of acting alone paralyzed him. After all, who would believe a 9-year-old boy over a convincingly kind adult? Victor, on the other hand, seemed to have a sixth sense for Noah's vulnerability. Whenever Samantha wasn't around, his expression turned cold, almost mocking. "You need to stop imagining things, kid," he'd say in a voice that sent chills through Noah. It was a cruel psychological game, and Noah began to doubt himself. Maybe he really was overreacting? But when he looked at his increasingly frail sister, the doubt vanished. Something had to be done. Days turned into a blur of anguish and helplessness. Noah wanted to confront Victor, but the idea of standing up to such a frightening man seemed impossible. He had no solid proof, and his young mind couldn't fully grasp how to handle such a threat. So, he withdrew, clinging to the hope that, somehow, things would resolve on their own. But reality wasn't so kind. Samantha's health deteriorated rapidly. She spent more time in bed, her eyes dimmed, her voice weak. Noah tried to care for her as best as he could but felt powerless in the face of her decline. He couldn't forget the sound of the drawers being rummaged through that night, the proof that Victor was behind it all. The fear of losing his sister overshadowed everything, but what could he do when no one would listen? Victor grew more confident with each passing day, as if he had already won a game Noah didn't even understand. The boy began isolating himself, speaking less and feeling more. He cried silently at night, afraid Samantha might hear and worry. It was a cruel cycle. The more he feared, the more trapped he felt. Fear became an invisible cage, and Noah didn't know how to escape. The emotional abandonment he felt was suffocating. Even with Samantha by his side, Noah felt utterly alone, bearing a burden no one could share. He began to think of his parents, searching for strength in the memories he had of them. But even those memories started blending with the pain of their absence. It was as if the entire world conspired to test him in every possible way. Then, on a cold morning, Samantha didn't wake up. Noah shook her shoulders, called her name, but all he received in return was a silence that seemed to echo through the entire house. Victor entered the room shortly after, wearing a mask of false concern. "She's at peace now," he said in a voice Noah knew was insincere. The boy felt the ground disappear beneath his feet. He had failed. The pain was immediate, but the guilt was even greater. Noah couldn't stop wondering if he could have done something differently. Maybe if he had screamed louder, pushed harder, she would still be alive. But now it was too late. As Victor handled the funeral arrangements, Noah realized he was completely alone. In the days that followed, Noah retreated into himself, barely eating or speaking. He couldn't process the void Samantha had left behind. Meanwhile, Victor assumed his role as guardian with chilling efficiency, controlling every aspect of the boy's life. Noah felt it was only a matter of time before something even worse happened. It wasn't until Victor started talking about changes, a new environment might be good for us, Noah, that the boy began to sense the tutor's next move. Something was about to happen, and even in the depths of his grief, Noah knew he had to be ready. But how could he fight when fear and abandonment loomed larger than any strength he could muster? In the darkness that seemed to engulf his life, Noah found a flicker of hope in his memories. He remembered the sound of his mother's laughter, the gentle way she would tousle his hair, and the stories his father used to tell him before bed. "The world can be cruel, Noah, but you're stronger than you think," his father had said, his voice carrying a strength that seemed to transcend time. It was in that echo that Noah sought a thread of hope. The weeks following Samantha's death were heavy and silent. Victor began showing his true colors, treating Noah with coldness and detachment. The boy knew he had no one to turn to, but he clung to fragments of memory, like a castaway holding onto debris. These memories became his refuge, a place where he could reconnect with the love he had lost. One afternoon, while alone in his room, Noah found an old, dusty photo album. The pages were filled with images of happier times. He and Samantha playing in the yard, his mother holding him in a tight embrace, his father teaching them how to fish. Flipping through those pages brought tears to his eyes, but it also awakened something new, a determination he didn't know he had. If they were here now, what would they tell him? He began to wonder if the love of his family could be stronger than the fear Victor had planted inside him. "Samantha always believed in me," he thought, staring at a picture of his sister. That idea was like a breath of life. For the first time in weeks, Noah felt like he still had something worth fighting for. Even if no one believed in him, he realized he had to believe in himself. That night, Noah looked out the window at the starry sky. His mother used to say that each star was a reminder of love that never faded. "Whenever you feel lost, look to them," she'd say. Noah closed his eyes and took a deep breath, trying to reconnect with a strength that felt so distant. Maybe this was the first step toward finding a way out of the chaos. Over time, he began to see that the memory of his family was more than just a painful longing. It was a reminder of what he could be. They had planted seeds of courage and kindness in his heart, and now it was time to make those seeds grow. Even at just 9 years old, Noah started to understand that strength doesn't come from the absence of fear, but from the ability to face it. He also began to observe Victor differently. Where there had been only fear before, there was now curiosity. Noah started paying attention to the man's habits, the things he said, and the objects he carried. He realized that to survive, he needed to understand his enemy. This wasn't something Samantha or his parents had taught him directly, but he felt it was something they would have approved of. Noah began to stash away small items he thought might be useful: a rusty pocket knife he found in the yard, a flashlight with nearly dead batteries. He didn't know exactly what he would do with them, but he felt the need to be prepared. Victor might see him as a fragile child, but Noah was determined to prove otherwise. With each passing day, Noah felt like he was building something within himself. It was a quiet strength, like the roots of a tree growing slowly but firmly. He knew the love of his family was his greatest weapon and that their legacy wouldn't be erased by Victor's cruelty. The battle ahead was daunting, but Noah was beginning to believe he could win it. Then came the news that changed everything. "We're moving, Noah," Victor said casually, masking his true intentions. For Noah, it sounded like an alarm bell. He knew that whatever Victor was planning, it wasn't for his benefit. It marked the beginning of a new chapter, and Noah felt the moment to act was drawing closer. The move happened quickly, so quickly that Noah barely had time to prepare. On a cold morning, Victor loaded him into an old car with a small suitcase containing just a few clothes and the old photo album Noah had hidden. As the house he'd shared with Samantha faded in the rearview mirror, a sense of abandonment filled his chest. It felt like he was leaving behind not just a house but everything that connected him to his past. Victor said little during the drive. The road stretched endlessly ahead, and the silence in the car was suffocating. Noah wanted to ask where they were going, but the dark look on Victor's face stopped him. He knew that any word might provoke something he wasn't ready to face. So, he just watched the trees pass by, trying to keep his emotions from spilling over. When they finally stopped, they were in a completely different place. A busy street full of noise and people who seemed oblivious to the drama unfolding there. Victor took the suitcase out of the car and, without looking at Noah, left it on the sidewalk. "Take care, kid," he said in a dry, indifferent voice. Noah stood frozen in disbelief. He didn't understand. Was this it? Was he being abandoned here, alone, as if he were nothing? The first few hours were the hardest. Noah didn't know where to go or what to do. He sat beside his suitcase, watching people rush past, none of them stopping to ask why a child was alone in such a place. The fear and sadness were so overwhelming that he could barely breathe. But even so, something inside him refused to give up. Hunger came soon after. Noah had no money or food, and the emptiness in his stomach seemed to mirror the emptiness in his soul. He began walking down the street, searching for a place where he might find something to eat. Each step felt like an enormous effort, but he kept going. There was a quiet determination growing within him, as if the memories of his family were pushing him forward. The following days were a test of survival. Noah learned to scavenge for scraps of food in trash bins and to sleep in less crowded corners, shielding himself from the night's cold wind. He also started observing the people around him, trying to learn from them. Some were kind, offering a piece of bread or an old blanket. Others were indifferent, and some even hostile. But Noah understood that in this world he could only rely on himself. Despite everything, he held onto the photo album as if it were his most precious treasure. Sometimes, at night, he would open it and look at the worn images. Each smiling face reminded him that he had once known love, and that helped him endure the loneliness. "You can do this, Noah," he whispered to himself, repeating the words his mother used to say. One of those nights, Noah overheard something that would change everything. A group of men were talking near where he was hiding, and one of them mentioned Victor's name. Noah froze, his heart pounding. He listened closely as the men spoke about Victor's plans to marry a wealthy woman named Jessie. In that moment, Noah knew he had to find her. The thought of confronting Victor again was terrifying, but Noah realized he couldn't stay idle. Jessie was his chance to expose the man before he caused more harm. He didn't know how he would do it, but the determination he felt outweighed his fear. For the first time in weeks, Noah had a purpose, and it made him feel alive again. With the little he had, Noah began to plan. He knew the journey would be dangerous, but he was ready to face it. The boy who once felt lost and powerless was now willing to fight. After all, if the love of his family had given him anything, it was the courage to never give up, even when the world seemed against him. Finding Jessie seemed like an impossible task for someone like Noah, who didn't even know where to begin. He wandered the streets, asking himself how he could reach her. But Victor's name, now etched into his mind, became his guide. He listened to people on street corners, scanned cafe windows, and followed any clue that reminded him of the man. Fear was still present, but something within him grew stronger every day, the determination to save Jesse from the fate he believed was already set. In a bustling cafe, Noah finally saw a woman who matched the description he had overheard. Jesse had a warm smile and seemed happy as she chatted with a group of friends. Noah felt a mix of relief and desperation. He needed to talk to her, but how could he convince someone so far removed from his world that she was in danger? Yet he knew he had no choice. With hesitant steps, Noah approached. His dirty clothes and tired appearance drew the attention of those around him, but he couldn't worry about that. "You need to listen to me, please," he said to Jesse, his voice a mix of urgency and fear. She looked at him with surprise, and her friends quickly stood up, concerned. "Are you okay, kid?" Jesse asked, but before Noah could answer, a waiter ushered him away. Noah resisted, shouting Victor's name and trying to explain, but his words were drowned out by the cafe's chatter. Jesse looked uneasy but eventually gave in to the pressure of those around her, who insisted she not waste time on a street boy. Noah was thrown out of the cafe, tears streaming down his face and his heart heavy. Once again, he felt the helplessness of being unheard, as if his fear and emotions were invisible to the world. But something shifted that afternoon. Jesse couldn't forget Noah's eyes or the desperate words he had spoken. That evening, as Victor sat in her home, Jesse began noticing little details she hadn't before. His overly controlled tone, smiles that didn't reach his eyes, everything began to feed a doubt she couldn't ignore. Meanwhile, Noah didn't give up. He started following Jesse from a distance, looking for another opportunity to warn her. He knew he couldn't approach her directly again, but he felt the need to stay close. The fear of failing once more was immense, but the memory of Samantha and his resolve to stop Victor kept him going. He didn't know if Jesse would believe him, but he had to try. Victor, on the other hand, began to sense something was off. Jesse seemed more cautious, less receptive to his words. He tried to maintain control, but her demeanor hinted that she was changing. Victor grew suspicious, which made him more dangerous. Noah knew every move he made had to be even more careful. Determined to uncover the truth, Jesse began investigating Victor on her own. She accessed old documents, asked mutual friends about him, and started piecing together inconsistencies. It was as if the mask he wore was starting to crack. At the same time, she couldn't shake the image of Noah, the boy who seemed to carry the weight of the world on his shoulders. By then, Noah and Jesse were connected by an invisible thread of truth and fear. Each in their own way, they sought answers and fought against Victor's lies. For Noah, the hardest part was knowing that Victor was still a living threat, a shadow that could turn deadly at any moment. For Jesse, the doubt was as agonizing as the danger. Believing or not believing that boy could mean the difference between life and death. Finally, Jesse decided to take a step forward. She arranged a meeting with Victor at her house, but this time with a plan in mind. Noah, unaware of the details, felt that something was about to happen. He lingered nearby, watching from afar, ready to act if things went wrong. The confrontation was drawing closer, and they both knew there was no turning back. Noah hid in the shadows of an alley, keeping a close watch on Jesse's house. He knew the moment of reckoning with Victor was near, but there was something more, something he couldn't ignore. Fear was still with him, but for some reason he felt driven to act. Jesse's fate was in his hands, and the boy felt the weight of the responsibility to warn her before it was too late. It was then that Jessie stepped out of her house. She walked briskly, her head low, as if carrying an invisible weight. Noah didn't hesitate. He followed her discreetly, his heart pounding in his chest. What he didn't know was that she was trying to find him, something he had hoped for but wasn't sure when or how it would happen. Finally, she stopped at a small cafe, unaware that Noah was right behind her. When he approached timidly, she turned and, seeing him, her face lit up. "Noah," she exclaimed, almost in a sigh of relief. He felt a warmth he hadn't experienced in weeks upon seeing her, safe and sound. Jesse exuded a sense of hope, something he hadn't felt in so long. Without wasting time, Noah said, "You need to know what's happening, Jesse." Victor is planning something terrible. Jessie leaned in, glancing around to ensure no one was listening. She had begun to suspect Victor after Noah's first warning, but she hadn't imagined how deep the deceit could go. I know, Jessie replied, her tone serious, stopping Noah in his tracks. She looked at him with deep, worried eyes. I've started noticing things that don't add up. He's trying to manipulate me. He's pulling me into a plan to take my fortune. He wants to get rid of me and keep everything. Her revelation made Noah's heart race. He had always sensed something was wrong, but he hadn't realized Victor was capable of such monstrosity. Taking a deep breath, Jessie looked at him, as though passing a torch of responsibility. I need your help, Noah. I can't do this alone. I know you're scared, but we have to act before it's too late. The boy didn't know what to say, but the certainty in Jessie's eyes made him feel he was no longer alone in this fight. She was inviting him to be part of something bigger than he had ever imagined. I won't let him do this to you, Noah said, his voice now steadier than ever. I'll help you. Together, we can stop him. Jessie smiled faintly, placing a reassuring hand on Noah's shoulder. She knew the real challenge was just beginning. The battle ahead would be tough, but she finally had someone she could trust. They were about to face Victor, which meant confronting not just the man himself but all of his lies and manipulations. Fear lingered, but now there was a greater purpose. The tension in the air was almost palpable. Jessie and Noah exchanged a renewed look of confidence, but both knew it was just a brief reprieve before the storm. Victor was inching closer to realizing his plans, and if they didn't act quickly, the consequences would be dire. Jessie, still clutching her phone, didn't hesitate to take action. She stood up with the resolve of someone who knew what needed to be done. Stay behind me, she told Noah, her voice firm. She was trying to stay calm, but deep down, she knew the confrontation with Victor wouldn't be easy. The danger was no longer lurking, it was a shadow looming over their lives. The tension between them and Victor was about to explode into something far more cruel. When the door to Jessie's house opened and Victor walked in with that familiar cynical smile, all she could do was stand her ground. He appeared calm, but Jessie knew he was in a frenzy underneath the surface. So, Jessie, what's going on? He asked in a tone of feigned concern. But Jessie was ready. She met his gaze with a piercing stare, trying not to show how much she was trembling inside. Victor, I know what you've done, and I know what you're trying to do. It's over, she said with a strength even she hadn't realized she had. Victor chuckled as if everything was a joke. You're accusing me of what, exactly? This is serious. Are you sure you want to go down this path? His words were venomous, but Jessie didn't waver. She glanced at Noah, who stood slightly behind her, his eyes locked on Victor. The boy felt his heart pounding in his chest, but his determination outweighed his fear. He knew this was the moment to act. Everything they had been through had led to this, and there was no turning back. Jessie was his ally now, and he would protect her with all his strength. As the conversation unfolded, Jessie quickly and subtly switched her glass of wine with Victor's, which he had just set down on the table. It was a small move but a crucial one. The plan was in motion. Jessie wasn't just confronting Victor, she was turning the game in her favor. Victor, sensing something was off, leaned back, his eyes narrowing slightly as he studied Jessie. You seem awfully confident, he said, his voice dripping with suspicion. Jessie didn't blink. Confidence comes from knowing the truth, Victor. And the truth always catches up. She took a step forward, and Noah, feeling her courage, clenched his fists, ready to stand by her no matter what happened next. Victor, unaware, picked up the glass and took a large gulp. He seemed oblivious to everything except his own arrogance. Jessie watched him carefully, waiting for the poison to take effect. What Victor didn't know was that the very poison he had used to control others was about to become his own downfall. He coughed lightly, feeling a wave of nausea, but quickly composed himself, still unaware of what was happening. From a distance, Noah watched, his heart racing. He knew they were entering dangerous territory. Victor turned to Jessie, suspicion growing in his eyes. What did you do? He growled, already beginning to feel unwell. Jessie, with a faint smile, replied calmly, I did what you never thought I would. I turned the game around, Victor. Now it's you who will pay for what you've done. Victor tried to stand up quickly, but his legs gave out beneath him. He glanced at Noah, who was now stepping closer, and an expression of fury overtook his face. You can't do this. I will, but his words trailed off as he collapsed to his knees, his hands trembling and his face turning pale. The poison was working quickly. Noah ran to Jessie, who was now standing beside Victor as he lay crumpled on the floor. She picked up the phone and, with impressive composure, called the police. He tried to kill me, and now he's reaping what he sowed. The sound of approaching sirens filled the air, and Noah felt a wave of relief. Justice was near. But Victor's plan was far from finished. He struggled to rise, but his strength failed him. Fear of capture consumed him as he made a feeble attempt to flee, but it was too late. The police arrived just in time, intercepting his escape and restraining him firmly. As the handcuffs clicked around his wrists, Victor looked at Noah with pure hatred. You didn't win, boy. This isn't over, he hissed, but his words carried no weight. Not that night. Jessie, now safe and breathing a sigh of relief, looked at Noah and smiled. We did it, Noah. You did it. Victor was taken into custody, but his presence lingered like a shadow that refused to fade. Even in his final moments of freedom, he had vowed revenge, and though he was defeated, his threats still echoed in Jessie and Noah's minds. The police began investigating Victor's past, uncovering a trail of hidden crimes. But for Jessie, nothing seemed more urgent than the harm he had inflicted on Noah and his sister. She knew peace wouldn't come easily, even with Victor's arrest. That night, however, marked a turning point for both Jessie and Noah. Sitting together on the couch in silence, they tried to process what had happened. The soft glow of the lamp cast shadows around the room, creating a sense of calm that contrasted sharply with the intensity of the previous hours. Suddenly, the sound of breaking glass and heavy footsteps reached their ears. Noah looked at Jessie, and a chilling premonition ran down his spine. Something was wrong. Before they could react, the front door burst open, and Victor appeared, armed and enraged. His face was twisted with fury, and his eyes burned with hatred as they scanned the room for his targets. Jessie stood up quickly, instinctively placing herself in front of Noah in a protective stance. You're not going to do anything, Victor, she shouted, though her voice wavered, knowing she was facing a man with nothing left to lose. Victor advanced, ignoring her words. I've already lost everything. There's nothing left for you, Jessie. You should have let me stay in control. The tension in the room was unbearable, and Noah knew the situation had spiraled out of control. But he also knew he couldn't back down. He couldn't let this man hurt Jessie. Adrenaline surged through his body, and his fear transformed into a fierce determination. As Victor approached, Noah acted without thinking. He charged toward him, knowing he wasn't strong enough to stop him but driven by the need to protect Jessie. Victor turned, surprised by the boy's reaction, and with a cruel smile, shoved him aside. You don't get it, boy. It was always going to be you or me. What Victor didn't expect was Jessie's unshakable courage. She grabbed the phone, ready to call the police again, but before she could dial, Victor lunged with the weapon in hand. Jessie felt panic surge through her but didn't hesitate. She yelled at Noah to get out of the way and, with a burst of adrenaline, jumped to push Victor, dramatically diverting the aim of the weapon. The impact was strong, and Jessie fell to the ground, her head striking the coffee table. The sound of her body hitting the floor echoed through the room. Noah screamed, running to her side in a state of utter panic. But even in pain, Jessie forced a smile and touched his face gently, saying, I'm okay, Noah. Stay calm. The police are on their way. He won't hurt you anymore. Victor, still furious, attempted to retreat, but the sound of approaching sirens made him pause for a moment. The sight of his own failure, his crumbling plan, caused him to hesitate. He tried to run, but the police arrived swiftly, surrounding the house. The moment that had felt endless finally came to an end, and the man who had caused so much suffering was restrained. The weight of his defeat was clear in his eyes, but for Noah and Jessie, the relief that followed was a beacon of hope on the horizon. As the police led Victor away, Jessie and Noah embraced, sharing a mutual sense of relief. They were safe, though the emotional toll of what they had endured would not be erased so easily. In that moment, Jessie realized something she had forgotten amidst all the chaos. She was no longer alone. And for Noah, for the first time in a long while, he felt that home was where he needed it most, beside someone who genuinely cared about him. With Victor's arrest and the weight of the situation beginning to lift, Noah and Jessie found themselves stepping into a new chapter of their lives, full of possibilities. The sense of relief that washed over them was indescribable, but the true reward lay in something much deeper, the bond forming between them. Jessie, who once thought she'd never find real meaning in her life again, now knew she had something worth fighting for. And Noah, who had seen himself as someone scarred by trauma, began to glimpse a future that had once seemed unattainable. Jessie's recovery was slower than she had hoped. The injuries from her fall while protecting Noah were severe, and she spent the following days recuperating in a hospital. Yet even in pain, gratitude filled her heart. She looked at Noah, who stayed by her side without fail. He was now her strength, just as she was his. The days that followed were filled with small joys, laughter that came more easily, conversations free from the constant shadow of Victor's presence. Jessie gave her testimony to the police against Victor, but she already felt that the greatest victory had been achieved, her freedom and the opportunity to start anew. The greatest gift, however, was realizing she didn't have to do it alone. Noah was there, ready to rebuild their lives together. Noah too began to transform. He opened up more, slowly shedding the weight of his past, even though the echoes of pain remained. But seeing Jessie recover and smile without fear brought him a sense of security he hadn't felt in years. He knew that with her, he finally had a home, not a perfect one, but one that was genuine and full of care. On the day Jessie was discharged from the hospital, she and Noah were closer than ever. Jessie looked at him, a soft smile on her face, and said, "Let's go home, Noah." They didn't know exactly what the future held, but the certainty that they would face it together was what mattered most. Jessie now had a family again, and for the first time in years, she felt a true sense of peace. Jessie and Noah's recovery wasn't easy, but it was steady. Over time, they began to rediscover the meaning of normalcy in their lives. Weeks passed, and each day chipped away at the fear, pain, and mistrust that had once defined them. Noah, who had been a boy without hope, started opening himself to the world with a quiet strength that amazed Jessie. She saw him now dedicating himself to his studies, overcoming the struggles he had faced, and carving out his own space in the world. Jessie, too, focused on rebuilding her life, with new priorities and a renewed sense of purpose. She learned to take better care of herself, to allow herself to be happy, and to trust again. The pain of loss still lingered, but she knew now that she could live with it without letting it weigh her down. While Noah ventured into a new path at school, Jessie took a significant step in rebuilding her career. She began sharing her experiences, turning the pain she had endured into motivation to help others overcome their own adversities. She understood that she was not merely a victim of Victor, but a woman reborn from her own strength. She now possessed a richer, more compassionate, and wiser outlook on life, one that she was determined to embrace fully. With every new step, their relationship deepened. Noah, who once believed he would never have a family again, found in Jessie not just a friend but a true mother. And Jessie, who thought she would never again have the capacity to care for someone so deeply, found in Noah the son she had always wanted. Together, they were learning that, contrary to what they once thought, it was possible to rebuild what had been lost and even create something stronger. It was then that Jessie, with a nervous smile, discovered she was pregnant. The news brought a mix of emotions, joy, surprise, but also a sense of renewal. When Noah heard, he looked at her with wide eyes, unable to fully believe what he was hearing. But then, with a calm expression, he smiled. "I'm going to be a great brother, you can count on it." Those words, simple and pure, summed up everything he had become. A boy who, after so much suffering, finally believed in his ability to love and be loved. The idea of a new life, a new child in their family, brought with it a new breath of hope. Jessie knew the journey she had walked had not been easy, but she also knew she had transformed. Each passing day made her stronger, more connected to her truth, and more grateful for the chance to rebuild her life. The child on the way was a symbol of her journey of overcoming. The family that had lost its parents but never stopped loving each other was now being rebuilt with more than just affection. It was being rebuilt with a deep understanding of what it truly meant to care, to support, and to be present. In that moment, Noah knew that his future would be a reflection of the strength and courage of his adoptive mother, Jessie, and he was determined to be worthy of that love. Together, the three of them, Noah, Jessie, and the baby on the way, were ready to face life's challenges, knowing that the true meaning of the word family was not in blood ties but in the ability to love unconditionally, to protect, and to rebuild. What once seemed like a tragedy to Noah was now turning into a new beginning, full of possibilities and with a brighter horizon ahead. As the months passed, Noah felt more complete than ever. The pain of his difficult childhood had not disappeared, but now he knew how to use it as fuel to grow. He began to understand that true strength was not in shielding himself from wounds but in learning how to heal them. Jessie, now pregnant, was the mother he had always longed for, and their love formed a solid foundation upon which he could build himself. Life was finally following the path he had always dreamed of but had once thought was out of reach. Yet, remnants of old pain still lingered. Noah experienced moments of insecurity and fear about the future, but he now knew how to handle these feelings. When the longing for Samantha and his parents overwhelmed him, he allowed himself to feel the sadness but also recognized that these emotions were part of who he was. He had learned that he didn't need to deny his past to grow but rather to accept that he had been shaped by everything he had been through. Each day, Noah showed himself more capable of engaging with the world around him. He began to excel in school, not only in his grades but also in his empathy and ability to listen to others. Teachers and classmates noticed the change in him. He was no longer the sad and withdrawn boy he had once been. He was someone with purpose, someone who now believed in himself. Jessie, for her part, was undergoing her own transformation. The pregnancy brought a mix of emotions, but for her, it also symbolized a new phase of her life. The woman who once thought she no longer had the strength to start over was now becoming a source of inspiration and strength for Noah. She knew that by bringing a new life into the world, she was creating more than just a child. She was creating a better future, not only for herself but for everyone around her. Motherhood reawakened the energy of her own parents in her, and she felt more connected than ever to the true meaning of being a family. The day the baby was born was a celebration of life for both of them. When the little one came into the world, Noah was there by Jessie's side, his eyes filled with love and hope. The baby, a healthy boy, became the ultimate reminder that no matter how hard the journey had been, love always found a way to bloom. Noah understood that his new brother symbolized more than just a continuation of their journey. He was proof that when one has the courage to confront the demons of the past, life has a magical way of rewarding them. The boy became the embodiment of a new chapter, a chapter where the shadows of the past were finally beginning to dissipate. The nights when Noah sat beside his newborn brother, gently rocking him to sleep, were moments of deep reflection for the boy. He knew his past would never completely leave him, but he also understood that now he was in control of his destiny. He felt fulfilled not because the pain had disappeared, but because he had learned to live with it. He realized that true healing didn't lie in erasing scars but in embracing them and turning them into strength. As the years passed, Noah became not only an example of resilience but also a mentor to many. The pain that had once defined him was now just a part of his story, a story he shared with the world in the hope that his words might ignite a light in the hearts of those still trapped in darkness. He graduated in social work and soon began working on projects aimed at at-risk children. For him, this work was more than a career, it was a mission. He understood how the help of a single person could transform lives, just as Jesse's courage and love had transformed his own. Noah realized that his greatest purpose was in helping those who, like him once, felt invisible and lost. His story of resilience inspired others to believe that it was possible to start over, no matter how difficult the path. He created a support program for children who had experienced trauma, offering them not only a safe space but also the opportunity to rewrite their stories. With Jesse by his side, who had become his greatest partner, Noah found strength in teaching others the value of unconditional love. Jesse, now working alongside him on various community projects, discovered a new vocation. Together, they became an unstoppable team, combining their strengths to turn pain into action and action into real change. The most surprising realization for Noah was that, throughout his journey, he had become stronger than he ever imagined. He had not only healed his own wounds but had also begun helping others heal theirs. He understood that, although fear and pain never completely disappeared, he had the power to control what he felt and transform those emotions into motivation to do good. The fear that once consumed him was now an ally, something that drove him to go further and strive for more. Noah's story, a tale of pain, abandonment, and resilience, had become an inspiration for many. The hardships he had endured had turned into lessons, and those lessons were shared in every speech he gave and every conversation he had with young people seeking his help. He no longer saw himself as the victim of a cruel story but as someone who had risen from the ashes to make a difference. He was no longer ashamed of his past. On the contrary, he felt proud of it, knowing that what made him unique was exactly what he had overcome. In quiet moments, Noah thought about the family he had lost and the family he now had. He smiled as he remembered Samantha, his sister who had always believed in him, and his parents, who, although physically absent, were always with him in spirit. He knew that in some way, they were by his side, guiding him. The longing never left him, but he understood that their love would never abandon him. What began as a boy alone, with nothing but pain and fear, had turned into a story of transformation. Noah had finally found the peace he sought, not in a distant place, but within himself. He had broken the cycle of pain and fear and created something new, a future filled with light, love, and hope. One afternoon, when the phone rang and Noah received the news that one of his programs had been selected for national expansion, he felt a wave of emotion. It was the reward for years of effort, sleepless nights, and immense challenges. But more importantly, it was proof that transformation was possible. He had found the elixir of life, not in a magical formula, but in the very process of healing and the power of helping others do the same. And as he looked at his younger brother, now growing up by his side, he knew that his story was far from over. On the contrary, it was just beginning. Noah's journey wasn't just a path of pain and suffering, but one of resilience, strength, and, above all, transformative love. What began as a story of abandonment and fear became a profound lesson about how it is possible to rewrite one's own destiny. With Jesse's support and the strength of the family bond they had built, Noah discovered that even in the most desperate situations, love can be the greatest force to heal and rebuild. He learned that the scars of the past do not define the future. Emotions, no matter how intense, can be used as tools for growth. True resilience is not about eliminating fear or pain but about how we choose to live with them and move forward despite them. By sharing his story and his strength with the world, Noah became not only an example of overcoming adversity but also a source of inspiration for those still struggling to find light in the shadows. With every step and every action, Noah proved that true strength lies in never giving up, in never losing the ability to love, even in the face of immense adversity. He finally found peace, not by escaping pain, but by transforming it into his greatest ally. In doing so, he not only rebuilt his own life but also helped transform the lives of countless others.